Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everyone. This is a fact of life, I truly believe, especially as we get older and our population is aging. The numbers there are pretty huge than in past decades. But at some point, you might find yourself in the role of caregiver, whether it's for a spouse or just somebody close to you, somebody you love. How do you navigate through those challenges? And there are many of them. You find yourself in a different role, a different identity. We're going to talk about that today. And interestingly, this comes from somebody who connects with those people on many different levels as the founder of the Center for Ageless Living, which is a wonderful facility in New Mexico, kind of a gateway of many different aspects: health, beauty, wellness, 45-bed assisted living program, and so much more. And she's given us so much insight in the past, and we're going to dig back into that. Suzette Lindemuth joins us on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here in New Mexico. It's been like 63 degrees. So it's unusually warm, but we're enjoying the sunshine, and, you can't complain about the weather.
Sounds delightful. Isn't it, when it's winter and you get those days that are a little bit warmer than expected, because it's been so cold, doesn't it feel like almost like it's summer, even though it's only 60 degrees?
I just said that yesterday to one of my staff. We were walking around. I said, I can't believe it's summer already. And we're like, no, it's really not summer. It's not.
But inversely,
but it felt like it.
If it was in the middle of the summer and it dropped down to the upper 50s, you'd be like, oh, wow, it's really cold. Oh, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
So odd. You, in your role as the founder of the center there in New Mexico, you must encounter this quite often, people that have found themselves in a caregiving role many times unexpectedly. What do you hear from people that are now in that situation?
I think most of us, realize that over the course of a life, things change, and we have to recognize that our roles do change. Some of us are mothers, and then we're sisters, and we're caretakers to our parents and our children. And then, sometimes we become caregivers to our spouses. And so it becomes a challenge to navigate those roles. And it's not just for women, it's for men too. I mean, obviously this is a journey that we all have. And I think it's one of those things that, we just really have to put into perspective, as things change. What can we do to enhance the quality of the lives of those that we're caretaking to, but also protect our own selves and our own quality of life. And I think that balance is extremely difficult, particularly for women. And I will say that most women that I know, my friends and I, we all married older men. And so, there's usually a 10-year gap, and sometimes it's the other direction. But generally speaking, I think that 10-year gap, particularly when you hit 65 and then 75, 85, that ratio really creates the dynamic that your role changes. It just is inevitable that things will get different in terms of those relationships.
I want to look at those situations a little bit deeper in different aspects. And I'm just going randomly here, no particular order of importance. But somebody's identity, when they're thrust into that role as caregiver, a lot of things change. Life has changed. Life has changed and then progressively changes. And I hear from others in that situation that their identity has changed. Sometimes they lose who they are. Sometimes they don't put the focus on them, and it's always on somebody else, obviously so. Your thoughts there, maybe some suggestions?
I think the most important thing to remember is that being a caregiver doesn't mean you're the only person caregiving, and that you really need to build a team or a community around the needs of the individual. I think when we marry and we, take those vows and we, in sickness and in illness, death till we part, it didn't say we had to do it alone. It just said that we were going to be there as a supportive part of that process. And I think that's what really helps us not lose our own identity. You have to carve out time for yourself. You have to be able to have people come in to help. if that's a family member or another individual or through your church or your networks. But you simply cannot do it alone. And I feel like a lot of people who become caregivers and start taking care of somebody who has a disability, particularly memory loss and dementia, become very isolated. They're the ones that are becoming isolated. The individual is probably not so much aware of the isolation, but the caregiver becomes the person who feels like they're stuck, like they don't have any options, that they can't get out of the house. And then when they're out of the house, all they do is worry about the person who's at home alone or with somebody else. And so it's a very vicious cycle that I think we see and we put ourselves in. And then there's all the guilt that comes with, well, I should be able to do this. I should be able to do it by myself. Well, that's just a false message that we've told ourselves, and we have to get over that false message that, there is no one that I know that can do this journey on their own.
You said such a powerful word, Suzette, guilt. There's so much of it within the caregiving aspect of life where you can beat yourself up in many different areas, say, oh, well, I should have taken him to that doctor. I should have done this. I should have done that. How do we release that guilt and just realize that I am doing the best that I can with what I have here, with the resources I have? Sometimes it's put on one person. Siblings, in that situation may disappear, and you're it. How do we release that guilt?
Well, I think it's hard to release it, but I think you have to sort of start to accept it. You have to feel like we have all been put on this earth to be caregivers, to be caring and gentle and supportive. And so that role we assume from the time we're born. And obviously some of us can assume it better than others, and some have more resources. But I think the guilt-driven factor is one that we can say, I am doing the best I can do in this situation. But I also know that I have to say, what can I do differently? How can I bring more resources in? What can I do to empower my family to be more supportive? How can I manipulate these things? And I think you have to talk to people. You have to go to support groups. I think crying is a wonderful tool. I think sometimes you just have to go out and scream at the tree and cry and say, wow, I got dealt a bad hand. Yeah, you did. But, you can throw in the cards and get a new deck of cards. I mean, you can change things, but you have to be really committed to saying, I don't want to be guilty anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore. And I'm going to go and get help. And if that means counseling or seeing your own physician for other suggestions. But, we live in a world where there are so many resources. And I know people feel like sometimes they're alone and they can't find the right resources. But really, it just takes a little bit of calling around and calling the right person and then tapping into those local resources that are within your community. I mean, every state has a Department of Aging. Senior centers abound. I mean, some people hate the senior system, that senior center system, but I will tell you that they have enormous resources for people.
Wow.
And it's affordable. So, I know money drives a lot of things, but you have to be able to say, I need help. It's okay for me to say that. It's okay to say, I can't do this by myself.
I want to go back and thank you for that, to realize that the resources are there. But the crying aspect, I think many of us, when we get to that point, we think we're weak and we're failing and we're crumbling. But in my understanding, it's the other way around. We were designed to release it. There's things that come out of your tears chemically that help move you forward. We need to do that. We need to just let it all out. Like you said, scream. It's mental health professionals say that all the time. But I feel that many of us think that, we're, and nobody has to see you cry, but just do it. It's okay.
And I think laughing is another great tool. I think sometimes we forget that there is some comedy in the whole aging process. And, we have to be able to laugh at it a little bit and recognize that, the journey is a a tough road sometimes, and no matter how many resources you have, sometimes it doesn't go well. I mean, it is hard to sometimes navigate the pain someone is suffering or the confusion that someone's suffering. Like, how do you help get that person over that hump? And oftentimes it's near impossible. And so you have to be able to kind of step back and say, this is just not going well. We better do something else. And so, I think you have to kind of be realistic about the journey. And I see, as a professional in an industry, I know that there's no way we could do what we do without a community around us. Like, we have a lot of caregivers. We have a lot of people coming in and working with our elders. It isn't one person. I know Hillary Clinton said it takes a community or a village to raise children, but it equally is true of older individuals. And, we need that support around us. And, I have a lot of families that come to me and say, I feel so guilty putting them in here. I should be able to do this. And I'm like, there's no way I could do this. There's no way you can do this. This is a team approach here. We need help. We have to get people around us. And physically, it's hard to be a caregiver. I think all of us know that, physically helping somebody is hard on us. And then it's a profession for young people. I mean, it's not, when you're 90 and you're trying to take care of your 98-year-old husband, it's probably not going to be too easy. So
true.
And I see that a lot. You see that a lot where people just try really way past their mental and their physical capacity, and they need to recognize that at a younger age and say, I'm going to build this team around me, and I'm going to be able to say it's okay.
To your point before about the laughing, I had a conversation with somebody last night that I'm close to, and both their parents have challenges. They're not really that old, but they've got a lot going on. And she took her mom, who has some physical challenges, to the shoe store the other day. They just had some extra time. Let's pop in there. She has to help her mom around. And they had these shoes where you just slip in. And, they're pretty cool shoes. And her mom is trying to do it. And she's like, I need a shoehorn to get my feet in here. It's not doing it. It's like, Mom, they're designed for that. They have a built-in shoehorn. And she was laughing about it. But you could take it from the other camera angle and get frustrated. Like, oh, Mom, what are you doing? And they were just laughing at it. Like, Mom, look what you're doing. Take a look down there. Put your foot in there. You have to look at it in that way.
Yeah.
It's life. How does somebody navigate all of the logistics, the medical aspect, the record keeping, the insurance? There is so much going on. That alone is a full-time job. Any suggestions in that area?
Well, I think everybody who would say that in terms of organizing your life and things around caregiving is to not try to do it all at one time. Try to take a piece at a time and figure it out. You can get overwhelmed very easily these days. I mean, there's so much going on and so many demands put on us that we kind of just want to just crawl in bed and put our pillow over our head and just go stop. But we know that, each part of the planning or the puzzle, and I always say, it's like a big puzzle to put together all these aspects of what you need to do for aging, is just that. Just sit down with a part of the puzzle, prioritize what's important to you, get the border done first, fill in the pieces as you need to, and don't try to do the puzzle all at one time. I think one of the things that I found was interesting when I was watching, all these awful fires in California and how quickly you can lose everything so fast. And I mentally said to myself, I really need to put all my papers, scan them. We can scan everything now, put them on a disk and put those disks someplace else so that I don't have to worry about where's my ID, where's my passport, where's my will, where's all these papers that I need, when we know we can consolidate that very quickly electronically. So we do have the advantages now of electronics and technology to help us with all these things. And I really felt that was like a little lesson for myself. Even though I have all those things, I don't have them all electronically saved. And I thought, that would be a simple thing to do, to get ready because fires are going to happen. I mean, we're in Albuquerque. There's a drought. I mean, we can lose everything very quickly. And to be prepared for aging, and is also to be prepared for the unexpected and what can happen in our lives. And so I think that was something, I think all of us can just sort of say, what's important? What do I need to do first?
I'm trying to take care of my health. I never focus on me, and I've been working on that. I walk around with different manila envelopes, and this is just nothing. I can't imagine working with a loved one and all that stuff that you have to keep track of. Maybe this exists, but there should be an app where everything can be placed in it, and maybe with HIPAA compliance of records, everything you need. I found one recently, but it was just kind of scraping the surface. It almost looked like somebody had the idea, but they never took it any further. Maybe it's out there, but I don't know. I think there's a place for that. It's all in one spot.
Well, when Katrina happened and they had to evacuate, and we've had fires in New Mexico where I've had to evacuate our facility. So evacuations happen. You think, it's never going to happen to me, but it does happen to you. And, being prepared is critical. Like, you have to have a plan. But, one of the lessons in Katrina was that, some of these individuals that were evacuated didn't have identifications on them, and their memory was impaired, and they couldn't figure out, like, who they were, where did they go. And so, if you're a caretaker and you're in that role where something can happen, and God forbid that, these things occur, but how kind of that plan in your head, like, where are you going to go? What do you need? Where, we have stickers to put on people now, call this phone number, because, you can get separated. I mean, things can happen in a natural disaster. So, being a caregiver, I think caregivers are the most interesting people, because to be a good caregiver, not only do you have to have empathy and compassion, but you have to be a very good organizer. Like, you have to be able to be a good planner and keep things together and be prepared. And that comes with practice. It comes with, like, you can take classes. I mean, all the agencies that I work with offer free classes on support groups about how to be a good caregiver. But caregivers are extraordinary people. And if you have a caregiver who's helping you, please thank them, because they don't get enough thanks. And oftentimes it is family members that are taking the brunt of the caregiving roles that we have here in the United States. And I don't see that changing. And I think that's just going to become more and more critical, that we help our children know what the role of a caregiver is and how that might affect them as they age, and let them become part of the process. Don't alienate your children. Don't think you can keep them from being a caregiver. They're going to be a caregiver someday.
Powerful thought right there. Wow. And it's interesting. You think of being a parent, what responsibility that brings. And, it's a lot of work being a parent, things to worry about. And, depending on the age of your child, there's always something there, whether they could be a tween and you're driving them to sports and you got a lot going on. You got 3 jobs and everything, all challenging. But when you're a caregiver, there is so much, I believe, just looking at others, I've never been in that role, so much more that you need to deal with, especially with the parent that's having, be it dementia and everything else that's connected to it, that we need to praise them and support them. So much work goes into caring for somebody else in those capacities.
Well, I think it's very hard when it's your spouse too. That anger and hurt and loss and grief, and you see your spouse changing in front of you, and you're saddened by the whole thing. Like, they were never like that. That's not who I married. That's not. I'm so disconnected from that, and and that is one of the saddest journeys, is to see somebody you love change, and then you become the caregiver, and how can that journey be made easier? And all I can say is, reach out to friends. Don't alienate yourself. I mean, you can spend all your time being a caregiver, but that's probably the most unhealthiest thing you can do. You have to make sure you're balancing that. And then there's a time when you just, you really need a team. You just simply cannot do it without more than 1 or 2 people around. You need assisted living, you need nursing homes, you need daycare, whatever that looks like, for you to feel comfortable, so that you can still have quality time with that person. And those roles
So true.
are hard to keep and manipulate. But
I spoke with somebody who was in the caregiving role for a spouse. She eventually, after he passed, went on to become a coach to help people with the caregiving journey. But to your point you just made, the one thing that she was challenged with was many times her spouse who had cancer, she felt like he didn't appreciate it. He didn't appreciate what she was doing. She understands it because he was angry that this has gone with my life. This is what I'm dealing with. So sometimes we forget you have to add that aspect to it.
Right.
It's pretty heavy.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of anger over, illness. I mean,
Sure.
My good friend just went through the death of her husband with cancer. And again, he became very angry, angry towards her. And, she just was lost with what to do with that anger. And, all you can do is, again, try to process it, understand their pain. But that doesn't make your pain any less sometimes. It's kind of hard to find that middle road. But luckily, she has friends and family and, everybody came around and tried to support that process. But it is hard and it's very difficult to balance it. And, even I, when, a good thing is when somebody can't hear, when your husband or your wife, they start to lose their hearing and you're trying to talk to them. They're going, what? And you're like, get a hearing aid. Like, what's wrong with you? And, they just don't want to accept it. And then you're trying to get, you're feeling this frustration. And so, even simple things like that, at some point you just have to stand back and go, it's okay if you can't hear me, never mind.
Yeah, just at that point, just throw your arms up. That's
it's frustrating. Yeah, just never mind.
Love it. You have so much insight.
It's a challenge.
So much insight from a different perspective in being part of the center, the founder of the center in New Mexico. If somebody wants to reach out to you in any level whatsoever, how do they find you?
You can email me at Suzette, Suzette, at nmagelessliving.com. You can go to our website, nmagelessliving, and find us. Lots of information on the website about the center. If you're here in New Mexico, give me a call. I don't charge for advice. People call me all the time asking me questions about things, and I'm happy to share my experiences. My experiences aren't everyone's experiences, but you can get a little glimmer of some information. So if I can help, give me a call.
Totally appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here today. And we overlook this, how important it is to support people that give care to loved ones. And I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
You got it. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her.
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Keep a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.